Freud never treated beauty as something merely aesthetic. For him, what attracts us at first glance carries an unconscious weight far deeper than we dare to admit. Beauty, especially feminine beauty, acts as a psychic symbol loaded with hidden meanings, a kind of ancestral magnet that activates emotional memories, unresolved traumas, and idealizations shaped since childhood. So when a man finds himself irresistibly drawn to a woman who embodies the modern Siren, he's not simply desiring her body. He's being pulled by an invisible code engraved deep within his unconscious. This instant attraction is not a compliment to the woman. It is a mirror reflecting what is unresolved within the man. The modern Siren appears with hypnotic beauty, calculated sensuality, and a gaze that promises transcendence, yet hides a tragic script. Freud understood that desire often springs from lack, and the greater the emotional void, the more powerful the fantasy projected onto this feminine figure who seems to embody everything that was missing. But behind this apparent perfection lies an archetypal structure, the woman who enchants and then devours, who offers pleasure as bait and entraps through absence. The fascination doesn't come merely from her curves or her pretty face, it comes from what she represents: redemption, challenge, mastery, salvation. The man sees in her the opportunity to be validated, loved unconditionally, or even healed. But the price to be paid is high. The trap is not set by the woman herself, but by the projection the man has built upon her. And so, many become emotional prisoners of someone who never truly existed. They fall for the image and ignore the signs. The question Freud compels us to ask is not "who is she?" but rather, "why are you so drawn to this?" This question opens the path to everything that follows, because behind this figure of enchanting beauty lie psychic patterns, unconscious games, and self-sabotaging mechanisms that few have the courage to confront. True liberation doesn't come from trying to change the Siren, but from recognizing the enchantment and breaking free from it before it drags you under completely. And that journey out from delusion to awakening, from fantasy to self-awareness, is what separates those who remain trapped in destructive cycles from those who face their own shadow and finally set themselves free. If you want to discover how to escape this psychological spell, stay until the end, because in the final part of this video, I'll reveal the only real way out of this invisible enchantment. At first, it's unsettling. Why do so many intelligent, successful, and emotionally mature men end up involved with women who clearly embody instability, manipulation, and psychological chaos? Is it naivety, emotional neediness, or is there something deeper and more invisible at play? Freud would say we don't choose with reason, we choose with the unconscious. And this unconscious, no matter how evolved the ego thinks it is, carries unresolved childhood patterns, repressed desires, and an unconscious drive for repetition. A man may have degrees, read philosophy, and be rational at work, but in the emotional realm he is still driven by ancient ghosts. And one of the most dangerous, according to Freud, is the archetype of the devouring mother disguised as a lover. This emotionally dangerous woman activates a primal instinct in him, the longing to be cared for, accepted, and even dominated, while simultaneously fighting to maintain his autonomy. She exerts a magnetic fascination because she symbolizes two opposing forces: pleasure and risk, affection and punishment. She is the figure who nurtures with attention and wounds with silence, who seduces with sweet gestures but corrodes with indifference. This creates a psychic conflict. He knows he's in a draining situation, but he can't leave. It's the classic state of cognitive dissonance. The mind says run, but the emotions whisper, maybe this time it'll be different. Deep down, this man is trying to repair in the present a pain from the past. Unconsciously, he wants to control the chaos, fix the original wound, rewrite the ending of an emotionally unresolved story, often linked to his relationship with the maternal figure, where love and pain walked hand in hand. This woman unknowingly becomes the stage where he replays his most intimate emotional tragedy. It's not a matter of foolishness. It's a compulsion to repeat, a desperate attempt to heal through the other. But repetition doesn't heal, it only drags him deeper. What Freud teaches us is that as long as the unconscious remains in the dark, it will keep directing your life, and you'll keep calling it fate. Perhaps this woman is not the problem. Perhaps she's the reflection, the brutal mirror of what still needs to be faced and transformed within you. Since ancient times, The figure of the siren has inhabited the collective unconscious as an irresistible symbol of enchanting beauty and imminent destruction. She sings to lure not out of love but to dominate. Her voice hypnotizes, her appearance fascinates, but her embrace drowns. For Freud, this is not just myth, it's pure psychodynamics. The siren represents the kind of woman who appears as the perfect answer to a man's unconscious desires, but whose true purpose is to expose the emotional wounds he doesn't even know he carries. What makes the siren archetype so powerful is the illusion of wholeness she projects. She seems to be everything the man longs for, sweet, sensual, deep, free. But behind that image hides a darker truth. The femme fatale is camouflaged within the ideal woman. And the most dangerous part? She doesn't need to be ill-intentioned. More often than not, she's simply playing out a psychic role. She activates in him what has long been dormant, whether for awakening or for collapse. Freud understood that love is often a projection, and what men project onto the ideal woman is a mosaic of neediness, idealization, unresolved trauma, and unintegrated desires. The modern siren presents herself as salvation, the one who will heal, rescue, fulfill. But as the enchantment deepens, what once felt like ecstasy turns into anxiety. The man finds himself caught in an emotional web he helped weave, torn between who she really is and who he hoped she would be. This is the siren's poison. She doesn't trap with chains, she traps with unspoken promises, with fantasies he created himself. And by the time he realizes it, he can no longer return to the surface. Because it's not just her he needs to confront, it's the internal illusion he nurtured. It's the pain of realizing that the ideal woman never existed outside his own mind, and that behind the gaze that promised liberation, there was only a mirror. The siren is not the enemy. She is the invitation to the most dangerous dive of all, the dive within. Have you ever felt that something was off in a relationship, but couldn't quite pinpoint what it was? Freud warned, the true modern siren doesn't scream her nature. She whispers it between the lines. These are almost invisible behaviors that over time corrode your emotional state like a silent poison. Here are 3 unconscious signs that you may be dealing with a siren, and more importantly, how they disguise themselves as affection and care, making you doubt your own perception. 1. Covert narcissism. Love that always needs to be repaid in larger doses. It's not blatant ego, but a subtle form of narcissism that demands constant validation, disguised in affectionate gestures. She compliments you today, but demands double the attention tomorrow. Everything revolves around her, though you don't notice it at first. Freud noted that this behavior reflects an emotional hunger that is never satisfied, and without realizing it, you begin to feed that thirst until you are drained. 2. Emotional manipulation. The puppet you don't realize you've become is it. The modern siren masters the art of making you feel guilty for no apparent reason, or making you feel special to the world, except only through her eyes. Subtle phrases, looks, strategic silences, all crafted to create an invisible game of control. Freud pointed out that this type of manipulation is a mechanism to maintain power in the relationship, masked as care and concern. You think you're giving love, but in truth, you're being guided to behave exactly the way she wants. 3. Lack of genuine empathy, affection that doesn't go beneath the surface. Despite the sweet words, there's no real connection. She hears but doesn't truly listen. She responds but doesn't understand. This emotional emptiness might seem invisible because it's subtle, a form of indifference hidden behind a smile. Freud would say this reveals a deep inability to put oneself in another's shoes, turning the relationship into a one-sided dynamic where only one person is truly feeling. How do these signs disguise themselves as affection? They show up as kind gestures, compliments, selective attention, and even moments of vulnerability, all designed to keep you entangled in the web. And the cruelest part? They make you question if the problem lies within you, as the affection is intermittent, swinging between warmth and coldness. It's the cycle that traps you, because you keep holding on to the hope of the next good moment. Recognizing these signs is the first step to breaking the enchantment. Freud reminds us, the unconscious acts in silence. It's up to you to learn how to listen before it's too late. Have you ever noticed how something that began as an intense and pleasurable experience can quickly turn into a cycle of pain and suffering? That's what Freud called the repetition compulsion, an unconscious pattern that drives us to seek out, again and again, the same type of situation, even when it emotionally destroys us. In the beginning, there is enchantment, the desire that ignites, the reward that comes with feeling alive, desired, special. But soon after, when the masks fall, what once felt like pleasure reveals itself as punishment, manipulation, disappointment, and the coldness that slowly erodes what's left of trust and self-esteem. The human mind, surprisingly, becomes addicted to this cycle of desire, reward, punishment. The brain associates the initial pleasure with the person, with the relationship, even if the overall outcome is negative. It's like an addiction. Even knowing it will hurt, we keep chasing the next dose, believing that this time it will be different. But why do so many men return even after being emotionally shattered? Because deep down, what they're really seeking isn't the person, it's the feeling of connection, of significance, of being seen. And Freud shows us that this pursuit is often tied to deep childhood wounds, where love was conditional and confusing. So even when the relationship becomes a form of punishment, the mind doesn't turn off the desire. It repeats the pattern, driven by the unconscious hope of healing the trauma, of finally receiving genuine love. It's an invisible trapper cycle that only breaks when the man becomes aware of this mechanism and chooses courageously to face his own shadow and break the spell. What if I told you that not every man seeks light, acceptance, or inner peace? What if deep down many carry a dark, almost forbidden desire to be chosen not by the light, but by the shadow, to be consumed not by healthy love, but by a dominant, powerful, even destructive feminine figure? Freud showed us that within the human psyche exists this duality, the light we want to show the world, and the shadow we insist on hiding, rejecting, or even denying. But the shadow doesn't disappear, it whispers, it calls, it draws us in. And there are men who consciously or unconsciously long to be marked by that shadow, as if it were a form of punishment, a repetition of what was never healed within them. This desire isn't easy to understand because it breaks the rules of what society calls healthy love. It's a love that wounds, that dominates, that traps, but also offers a strange sense of purpose and belonging. To be chosen by the shadow is a kind of silent pact between fear and need, fear of facing one's own darkness and the need to be seen even in it. Freud said that this pursuit of poison is a form of self-punishment, an unconscious penalty for repressed desire, unresolved anger, and lingering guilt. It is the man who, instead of choosing freedom, chooses to lose himself in the intensity of the feminine shadow because in some way he believes he deserves it. But this cycle can be broken. The path lies in the courage to face the shadow, to understand that being seen doesn't have to come through suffering, and that the true choice, the one that sets you free, is born from an honest meeting between light and darkness within yourself. Behind the sweet and seductive "I love you," there is often a much darker truth. I want to mold you. The modern Siren doesn't seek an equal partnership, doesn't want to build something together. She wants emotional domination, to sculpt her partner in her image, and to control every move in the game. This psychological game is invisible, subtle but deadly. Through seemingly sincere caresses, strategic compliments, and rewards given in intermittent doses, she gradually disarms the male ego. This alternation between affection and distance creates a magnetic field where the man becomes trapped, torn between pleasure and punishment. Freud and other thinkers have long warned, the human being is highly susceptible to this pattern because the brain seeks reward, even when it comes wrapped in suffering. The male ego, thirsty for approval, is led to adapt, to give in, and in the process, loses emotional autonomy. This isn't love, it's power in disguise. Emotional control wrapped in kisses and sweet words. And the most dangerous part? The man trapped in this cycle often doesn't even realize he's being manipulated, believing instead that he's living a real romance. Recognizing this game is the first step toward breaking the illusion, because true love doesn't seek to mold or dominate, it respects and liberates. And only those who awaken to this truth can break the invisible chains of the fatal enchantment. Freud once said, "What you love in another is a piece of yourself projected outward," and this becomes even more evident when love turns into obsession, when the desire to have someone merges with the urgency to be validated. The modern Siren, with her beauty, mystery, and emotional unavailability, is not just a woman. She is a mirror, a painful reflection of the part of yourself you have yet to face. The wounded, lonely, or fragmented man doesn't fall in love with her alone. He falls in love with the idea of what she represents to him: redemption, fulfillment, rescue. He looks at her and sees the possibility of feeling whole. But what is he really trying to save? The woman in front of him, or the emotional child within him, still crying out for attention, love, and safety? This woman is not the problem. She is the portal, the mirror through which he sees or tries not to see his own emptiness. When she disappears, grows cold, or rejects him, the true pain isn't her absence. It's the brutal confrontation with the space she once occupied inside him, a space that was already empty before she arrived. She merely illuminated what was hidden in the dark. And that is where the poison lies. Because instead of looking inward, the man keeps looking at her, trying to understand, fix, rescue. But the more he chases her, the further he drifts from himself. Because she was never the answer. She only reflected the question he refuses to ask. The modern siren is beautiful, but she is empty for those who are also empty inside. True healing doesn't come from winning her over. It comes when the man faces the mirror she offers and chooses to fill the abyss within himself with awareness, not with fantasy. Most men, when they find themselves trapped in the siren's cycle, caught between desire, guilt, and abandonment, instinctively try to fix the woman. They explain, justify, adapt. They enter an emotional labyrinth, believing that if they make the right moves, she will finally become what they projected. But that is the final trap. Because the real salvation was never in her. It was always in the internal mirror he was avoiding. Freud was clear. You only free yourself when you recognize the source of your enchantment, and that source is within you. The woman is not the spell, she is the trigger. What traps the man is not her beauty or her indifference. What holds him captive is his own emotional codependence, the deep desire to be chosen to fill a void that was born long before she ever appeared. This emptiness is not romantic. It is psychic. It is existential. It is the open wound between what he needed to receive and what never came. And as long as he tries to heal this through another person, he will remain a prisoner of archetypes, fantasies, and cycles of self-punishment. The antidote, as Freud pointed out, is to look within, not at her. What's truly frightening is not losing her, but losing the illusion that she would save something only he can resolve. Facing one's own shadow is the most courageous act a man can undertake, because within it lie the fears he never named, the traumas he never confronted, and the desires he always hid. And it is there, in that shadowy territory, that the real exit exists. Not in trying to change the siren, but in rescuing himself from the dependence on the spell. Only those who dive deep into their own pain cross the desert of absence and face the mirror with brutal honesty, survive. And more than that, they are reborn. No longer as the emotional servant who begs for love, but as a whole man who is already enough and therefore is finally free. This channel does not feed illusions. Here we unveil the unconscious layer by layer, without filters, without romanticizing. If this confronts you, it's because it's working. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, because the next step will take you even deeper. And not everyone is ready for that.